He thought he was just arresting another nobody. He had no idea the man in handcuffs was about to end his entire career. And by the time he figured it out, it was already too late. Officer Daniel Briggs had a habit of throwing his weight around, especially when it came to black men. He thought his badge gave him the power to stop, harass, and arrest anyone he felt didn't belong. But one day, he made a mistake that would cost him everything. The man he handcuffed wasn't just any black man. He was Captain James Carter, one of the highest-ranking officers in the city. And what happened next? Let's just say karma didn't take long to arrive. Captain James Carter had been in law enforcement for over 20 years. He had spent his career taking down criminals, mentoring young officers, and working to improve the relationship between police and the community. He was highly respected both by those he worked with and by the public. That evening, he wasn't in uniform. He was off duty, dressed casually in jeans and a button-up shirt, heading to meet a fellow officer for dinner. It had been a long week, and he was looking forward to unwinding. The city streets were quieter than usual, the neon lights of local shops flickering against the pavement. As Captain Carter pulled into a parking lot near the restaurant, he noticed a police cruiser slowing down across the street. He didn't think much of it at first until the headlights swung around and the car pulled up right behind him, flashing red and blue lights. At first, Carter assumed there must have been some kind of emergency. Maybe they were stopping him to ask about a suspect in the area. But as soon as he saw the officer step out, hand already on his holster, posture stiff with authority, he knew exactly what was happening. Officer Daniel Briggs approached, his face cold and unreadable. License and registration. He barked before Carter could even greet him. No explanation. No friendly introduction, just an order. Carter remained calm. Officer, can I ask why I'm being stopped? Briggs narrowed his eyes. I said, license and registration. Something in his tone wasn't just commanding, it was dismissive, full of unwarranted suspicion. Carter, still composed, slowly reached for his wallet and pulled out his ID. He knew what was going on, but he wanted to give the officer a chance to correct himself. He handed over his license, expecting Briggs to realize his mistake. But Briggs barely glanced at the name. Instead, he tossed the ID back with a smirk. Step out of the vehicle, he ordered. I know a stolen car when I see one. James took a deep breath, keeping his composure. Officer, I'd like to call my superior. But before he could finish, Briggs yanked him out of the car. Within seconds, James was shoved against his own vehicle and handcuffed. A small crowd began gathering, watching in disbelief. James tried once more. I strongly suggest you look at my ID again. But Briggs just laughed. Save it for the judge. That's when Carter felt the anger bubbling beneath his control. This wasn't a traffic stop. This was a power trip. And Briggs had just picked the wrong man to flex his authority on. As Briggs walked James toward the squad car, another officer arrived on the scene, Sergeant Kelly, one of James's longtime colleagues. Kelly stepped out of his patrol car and froze. His eyes darted between James, still in handcuffs, and Briggs, who was acting smug. Briggs, what the hell are you doing? Sergeant Kelly's expression darkened as he took a step closer. Briggs, he said slowly, do you have any idea who this is? Briggs scoffed. Yeah, some guy who thought he could cruise around in a car that doesn't belong to him. Kelly exhaled sharply, shaking his head in disbelief. Then, in a voice dripping with anger, he said, asterisk, asterisk. That man is Captain James Carter, your commanding officer. Briggs's smirk vanished instantly. His face went pale, and he stumbled back, his entire body stiff with fear. Still handcuffed, James Carter turned his head and spoke, his voice calm but razor sharp. Officer Briggs, would you like to explain to me why I'm in handcuffs right now? The arrogant officer, now realizing his career was flashing before his eyes, fumbled for words. Captain, sir, I didn't know. Meanwhile, Kelly had already called dispatch. Within minutes, multiple patrol cars arrived, officers stepping out in shock as they saw their own captain in cuffs. Briggs wasn't getting out of this. The entire street fell dead silent as James Carter slowly turned around, lifting his still cuffed wrists toward Briggs. Take them off. His voice was low, controlled but dangerous. Briggs' hands shook as he fumbled with the keys, unlocking the cuffs as fast as he could. As soon as the cuffs clicked open, Captain Carter didn't move. He just stared at Briggs. "You racially profiled me. You escalated without cause. You ignored my ID. And you put your own superior officer in handcuffs without a single shred of evidence." He took a step closer. "So tell me, Briggshaw, long do you think you'll be keeping your job?" The moment was beyond humiliating. The same officer who had slammed Carter against a car just minutes earlier was now being escorted back to the station himself. The police chief had already been informed, and Briggs was ordered to surrender his badge and weapon pending an immediate internal review. Briggs tried one last desperate excuse. It was just a misunderstanding. "No," Carter interrupted, his voice like steel. "It was discrimination." And just like that, Briggs knew. His career was over. The department launched a full investigation into his past behavior. It wasn't long before other complaints surfaced: false arrests, excessive force, racial bias. By the end of the week, he was fired and facing legal action. Captain Carter didn't let the incident slide. He pushed for immediate training programs on racial profiling, ensuring that what happened to him would never happen again. Unbeknownst to Briggs, someone in the crowd had recorded the entire incident. The video exploded online, exposing the ugly reality of racial profiling in law enforcement. It sparked a national conversation and put massive pressure on the city's police force to hold officers accountable. The public outrage forced the department to reevaluate its officers. Several others were disciplined for similar misconduct. Community leaders applauded Captain Carter for staying composed in the face of injustice. His leadership set a new standard for police accountability. The incident was used as a case study in police training programs across the country, showing how bias can lead to reckless and career-ending mistakes. This story proves that a badge doesn't make you untouchable, justice does. Briggs thought he had power, but in reality, he had nothing. Because the moment he let his prejudice override his duty, he sealed his own fate. Captain Carter's story is a lesson in control, dignity, and karma. He didn't have to fight or yell, he just let the truth destroy the man who tried to take him down. And the biggest lesson of all? Racism doesn't just ruin lives, it ruins careers. Subscribe for more powerful stories that expose injustice and celebrate those who fight for what's right.